Nobody really cares about your money more than you do, and nobody cares about your business more than you do either. So you have good employees, and hopefully, you mentor them and whatnot. But still, they're still employees. And so, you really, when you're self-employed, when you're running a business, you really, in my opinion, to be successful, you just got to be all in. It's okay to keep your day job for a while to learn it, but eventually you've got to cut ties from that and go all in, or else you're just, living on a prayer, kind of hoping things will turn out.
Some people. This episode is brought to you by Big Storage Ventures. We are now inviting you to team up and partner alongside us. We bring our experience hunting storage deals and maximizing the self-storage asset to provide our partners with cash flow, tax benefits, and appreciation, all in one recession-resistant asset. Leverage our sister company, Big Ben's Moving Service, to fill your facility and give you an edge over the competition. Reach out to bigstorageventures@gmail.com or DM Big Storage Ventures on Instagram to team up. You guys getting ready for wedding season?
Yeah, all the stuff's showing up at the house. So I did. After Arizona, I came home and I'm like, okay, I called Busy. I said, I'm taking control now. Mom's paralyzed.
Everyone's probably grateful.
Listen, Bridezilla.
All right, Busy. This is going to go one way or two ways. I'm in charge of your wedding.
And she's like, she doesn't want that. Well, she got it.
I already bought your desserts. They're in the freezer.
Yeah.
We got a tent set up in the church. Take it or leave it.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, weddings can add up so fast.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on like parents paying for weddings?
Well, it kind of depends on how where the kids are, where they're at when they get married. If you're going to get married young and limited resources, then obviously parents are going to pay for it. But I think the kids ought to realize that it's not going to be what you think it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
did you ever grow up thinking I want my daughter, I want to throw like a princess wedding for my daughter or something like that?
Never crossed my mind.
I don't think any guy was going to admit if he wants to throw a princess party, Callan.
Well, I just wonder because I met one of my friends. Well, we're not like the same age or anything,
right?
But he really, really wanted to throw a good wedding for his daughter.
He's metrosexual.
Yeah. I don't think. Look. Rob only has one daughter. Busy's his princess, but I don't think he thinks at night about throwing the princess party.
So this is where I'm going with it, though, man. This is where I'm going. He sold his house. Literally sold his house.
Oh my gosh.
Cashed out his house. Took his 50...
And his wife left him.
No, they're renting now. They're screwed. They're stuck renting. So he literally sold his house, took his capital gains to pay for his daughter's wedding.
Yeah. Wow.
That's an example of a fail.
How do you feel about that?
No, I love my daughter to death, but she's there.
Was that only kid or what? Well, I mean, what?
No, they have 3 kids, maybe only daughter. I can't remember. But I'm like, you did what? You're renting now? They can't get a house now.
Oh my
gosh. They sold themselves just below peak, and now they're gonna be renters for life.
What in the? Are they not LDS?
They left the church.
Yeah.
So that's why they lost.
One bad decision after another. They lost the Holy Ghost.
The spirit of truth left them.
A stupor of thought. Sell the house.
They've been wandering in dark paths ever since, financially and spiritually.
Gosh, yeah, they may have put themselves in financial turmoil before, but I was just I just couldn't believe it. But what makes me wonder is what goes on in every dad's mind with their daughter's wedding.
Well, you want it to be something memorable and nice and and something because that girls for the most part they dream and think about that. I guess it depends if you have a daughter that's like a princess daughter that grew up wearing dresses and played Cinderella or whatnot,
diva,
but
yeah.
A diva like that, then you're in trouble. But with Busy, it's like she's so conservative and doesn't spend money and all that kind of stuff. So
Busy's chill, but she is, now that the wedding's coming, she's wanting certain things a certain way, right?
Yeah.
All women do.
Well, we appreciate you stepping away from wedding prep, Dadzilla and Bridezilla to come on, Rob.
No worries, man.
I just want to set the stage for our listeners. I texted my family before. I was like, what are some of your guys' fondest memories of, we call him affectionately Uncle Buck. Callan, share yours first.
What, my story? Well, I guess the first time I met you was in Costa Rica, I think.
All right. Yeah.
And
yeah.
it probably would have been you doing a gainer off a cliff. That's what I remember you doing.
Yeah, we probably saw each other on the boat at Lake Powell, but as far as the first interactions and just like
at Costa Rica.
yeah.
I do remember Lake Powell, when we did that. That was
Sure.
fun. Because you brought your boat. Okay, that was fun.
No, but I've seen some pictures. I've lost like 140 pounds since then. Now I look at those videos, I'm like, what the heck was that guy thinking, man?
That was watching that in slow motion, just gainers off of cliff waterfalls. That was awesome.
But that was, how much did you weigh back then?
That's like 320 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I understand why everybody was like giving that look like,
Is he really gonna jump?
and Angie's like, you're embarrassing me, Robert. No, but it's all good.
We were saying, okay, this is the uncle that would shoot you in the bare butt with a BB gun, point blank. He put fish in his fly and called trouser trout. He's the one that's gonna show you the funny YouTube videos as a little kid that that you're gonna laugh and go show your friends. And there was one more really good one was, we already talked about jumping high off of pushing us to jump off the higher cliff. But one of my really early memories was in Alaska. My dad took me when I was 12, and Rob and my dad thought I was old enough to handle it at that point. But they showed me Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I feel like that's where some of my earliest found. Yeah. We listened to it on cassette tape back then. Yeah,
that was right around 2000, right? And so it was that first trip, and that's when I was like just getting that changed that mindset. And so you and I both went through that Rich Dad Poor Dad probably at the same time.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, so just give us a little background. Where were you before that, and what was the epiphany you were having around that time?
Well, so I had spent at that time, so it was 2000. I was about 3 or 4 years with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and
nice.
In that job, it was a great job, so, a lot of, freedom, you operate as a sales rep, like you own your own business, you manage it, but you quickly find out that you really have very limited impact on what you're doing, so you can get the job done in, a couple hours and you got a lot of time on your hands. So you're just doing busy work. And so I kind of got to the point where it's like, is this, well, one, I was making good money for, you get kind of lazy in your thought process, So at that point I was making over $100,000 a year, great benefits. And so I just kind of coasted for years. Yeah. And about 3 to 5 years into it's when I started thinking, okay, there's got to be something more than this, And so I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Okay. And so then I read all of his books. Then I read another book called The Richest Man in Babylon, So it's kind of that same concept. And then Think for a Change and The Power of Focus, And so really those books kind of just changed my mindset, and just the way I thought, And so, fortunate with my job at Pfizer, which I spent 15 years there. Wow. From 97 through 2008. So I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We went to Alaska, and that's when I was hatching my first business venture, really, that I was going to go into. Okay. So I, convinced 3 other Pfizer reps. My brother was 2 other Pfizer reps and my brother to go in. And at that time, remember, the housing market was booming, and so.
This is
about 2000.
So
no, this is 2000. This is right in 2000.
8 years before.
Yeah. So, and I put myself through college, and as a kid worked construction, so, and I was always paid by the piece, so I was never paid by the hour. I was always paid by the piece. So you work as fast as you can, as hard as you can, you get paid good, and then you're done, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've never really been paid by the hour, so.
Probably an advantage.
Yeah. So I just never thought that way, right? So, I was watching all these foundations go up, houses just going up like crazy during the housing boom, right? And so I'm thinking, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I know construction, And so I convinced 3 or 4 guys to put in a couple $100,000 with me. I put in $100,000. I kept my day job, right? And minded my own business as the principles that are taught in that book, right? And so from 2000 to 2008, we built about 50 homes, and was in the parade of homes and won lots of prizes and accolades and stuff, And so that was kind of my introduction, to being employed and keeping a job at the same time. And so learned a lot as far as what to do and what not to do, from that experience. So
I would love to know what those are.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really cool. I didn't even know your story.
Right.
That's how it started. What were those, before we continue on the timeline, those lessons that you learned that you would have done different when you're trying to start a side hustle?
Well, I think the thing is about starting, the principle of keeping your job, minding your own business, because it just depends on how much resources you have and how much cash you have to launch, and also kind of what your network is. There's a principle called proximity, or who's around you to like influence you and guide you, right? And so, the downfall I had with that first venture, Arno Homes, was I was making good money working for Pfizer, and so I took money, I invested in this business as my partners did, and then hired people, and we grew, and we were making money. The business was making money, but I wasn't making money. And you just kept telling yourself, well, the business will eventually make money, right? And so you just got to keep going at it, and then you're trusting employees that you hire, to be doing the right thing. And so you just think that because you're in business, you're going to make money, and you're going to get ahead, and and you're not and you're thinking, okay, the wave of construction is going to keep on going, and so you just think that nothing's going to change, and so so I didn't burn my boats, if you will, on there. Though I was in financially with putting a lot of money in this at that time, but whether the business failed or succeeded, my life was still going to be the same. So if it went under, I still had a good job, had a good income. My life really wouldn't change. Yeah, I lost some investment money. Yeah. But so lesson I learned there was really nobody really cares about your money more than you do, and nobody cares about your business more than you do either. So you have good employees, and hopefully, you mentor them and whatnot. But still, they're still employees. And so, you really, when you're self-employed, when you're running a business, you really, in my opinion, to be successful, you just got to be all in. It's okay to keep your day job for a while to learn it, but eventually you've got to cut ties from that and go all in, or else you're just, living on a prayer, kind of hoping things will turn out.
Some people never do it, right? Like, one thing I really admire is that you already had all your kids at this point, right? Like, you've been, in the process. I'm sure that
so at that time in 2000, we just had busy at that time, right?
Okay.
So from 2000, and we built to 2008, and you got to remember what happened in 2006, 2008. One is, what happened was one of my employees that I trusted, that I've known since I was 12, ended up, kind of feeling like, hey, I'm doing all the work, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. I'm doing all the work, and you guys get all the accolades and whatnot, but I don't have any ownership. And so he started doing side jobs, and started ordering a little too much lumber here, a little too many windows there, doing things on the side, and then justifying that, and then spending the company money for personal things, and when cash is coming in, and we're talking millions of dollars,
you can hide.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't get seen because it's just so fluid. And then when you're not actively looking at reports, which I'm not. I'm kind of like a rainmaker, as far as, what do I need to do? Let's go make it rain. Let's make the money come in. Yeah. I'll let somebody else worry about, making sure we're making a profit, but so if you remember the housing market in 2006 to 2008, it just collapsed, and so eventually the money stopped coming in, and then we're like, well, okay, what's happening here? And then everything was exposed, right? And so.
Let's check your mic. I can't hear you in the
mic check.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just
I'm
couldn't.
Okay. I think I'm okay.
Okay.
Well, Justice, you can confirm that too.
I think you just keep leaning away a little bit.
Okay, my bad.
I just couldn't hear it in the mic. I was just getting worried that if we had this good conversation.
Yeah, sorry. But I think my takeaway is clarifying roles in a business, right? You said, like, I'm the rainmaker. You got to have someone that is checking,
right?
Basically, following behind the rainmaker, making sure they're catching all the
right.
dollars that are raining, and so That kind of reminds me of us.
Yeah.
I don't know if you thought the same thing.
Well,
but
it is. You know, you like having a good partner, like a CFO type of a finance partner, someone that's gonna to do that. But I mean, I think just how powerful your strengths are as sales. You know, you going from if you can do pharmaceutical, Pfizer, right? And did you say like a particular drug? But it's like having that sales guy and then having the operations or the finance and to be able to make sure everything's working. Yeah, it's a pretty powerful setup.
Right. Yeah.
And a couple other takeaways too is, you know, that making that jump you know, you talked about having your job and knowing when the right time is. You know, a lot of people say, wait to quit your job till your income is, you know, surpasses your business income.
Right.
But a lot of times that moment might never come. So the timing is really tough to do.
Well, what happens is we kind of, you know, especially when you're making good money, you know, saying goodbye to that money is hard, you know, and so you get kind of lazy and you get kind of, you know, I don't want to really give up those benefits. And so, you know, that's what really, you know, cause people to get paralyzed in that decision process is like, well, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Maybe next month I'll give up my paycheck, you know, you know, so. And really what happened with me on this is like, you know, if you're familiar with the pharmaceutical industry is, you know, there was lots of new breakthroughs in the 90s and drugs that came out. And then 20 years later, 10, 15 years later, they started going generic, you know. And so there was a boom in the industry where all the competition was hiring. And then eventually they all had to let go. And so every year, you know, there was thousands of drug reps getting let go, you know. And so I was at the point where, you know, unfortunate for me, I had lost a lot of my available cash in that business to invest and start my own business, right? You know, and so by the time, you know, I got let go from Pfizer for my time, every month, every year there would be like a announcement we're laying people off, you know. And so before my business went under, I was like, you know, I hope I'm on that list because they'd give us a severance package, right? You know, so I was like, that's just more money to invest. You know, so you know, I'm not leaving, but if you boot me out, you know, I'll go and, you know, take that money, right? And so I stayed too long. The business crashed. Then all my equity in my house was gone and upside down, you know, and so all I had was a little bit was left in my 401k, and then the market was also going down as well, right? And so because I waited too long, you know, I really at that point was like, okay, what am I going to do next? I hate my job, you know. Actually, I like the income and the way of life, but really the job, the stimulation of like creating, it's just not rewarding, you know. You know, and so when finally in 2011 I got my severance package, you know, so I knew that the day would eventually come. So it was, you know, funny. All my colleagues were like, you know, we'd go to these management meetings and stuff, and we'd sit around and they'd be like, "What are you gonna do? There's gonna be layoffs next month. Have you guys heard? You know, who's hiring? You know, it's just everybody's just completely scared." And I'm like, look around. We're like at the Ritz-Carlton, you know, and there's boats and people drive nice cars. I'm going, dude. We live in America, guys. It's like you guys are afraid, like, you know, it's like we live in a third world. What are we gonna do if you lose your jobs? You know, if you're worried about, you know, losing your job, you're probably not worth what you're getting paid. You know,
that's a good point.
You know,
Wow.
you know,
that's a powerful statement.
You know, so but eventually that day, you know, we all got laid off, all of us, 1,000 of us, gone, right? And so I called up my buddy, you know, that he'd left Pfizer years and years ago. He got let go on one of the prior layoffs, right? And so he started up a home care business called Amada, you know, in Orange County. And so I was watching him grow his Amada business while I was growing my
home building,
my home building business, right? You know, and so we hadn't talked for about a year or so, and then, you know, my business went under, and so I called him up and I'm like, Chad, they let me go. They're giving me a sack of money. What should I do here? Tell me more about your business, you know. And so we kind of started talking that way about what he does in his space. And I realized that, you know, the cost of starting a business, you know, the process of going through it, you know, you got to do, you know, start up your marketing, you got to learn the business that you're doing, you know. And so just going at it on your own is expensive, you know, and time consuming. And I didn't have a lot of time because I had a limited amount of cash left because I lost a lot of it in my first venture that was there. So I knew that, you know, maybe I should look more into a franchise, you know, where instead of starting from scratch, you know, I'm buying into a business organization where you're in business, you know, for yourself, but not necessarily by yourself, is what they say in the franchising industry, right? And so I thought, okay, what am I going to do here? Do I want to be one of 500 franchisees where it's like, welcome to the family. You sell these widgets, but you owe us 10% every month, and if you fail, sorry, we'll sell again to somebody else. So that's not me, because I'm more of an independent thinker. As far as I want to be able to think and do things the way that I want it. I looked online. I found a franchise broker. And so he says, well, with your background, let's look at these 4 different franchise, type or organizations. And he said, well, what do you know about home care? And I'm like, well, my buddy owns a home care company, right? Mm-hmm. And so he goes, I think you'd be great at home care. So that's when I reached out to Chad, actually. And I said, hey, Chad, I'm going to start validating, 4 or 5 franchise companies. I said, so, hey, why don't you, we're going to, if anything about franchising, you go through this 5-step process where you learn about the business and what they do, and then they court you, and eventually you write them a check, and then you come in and you're ready to go, right? Yeah. So I said, Chad, why don't we do this? I'll call you first, put you on mute, and then we'll go through this whole process. And after each call, about an hour long, we'll dissect what just happened, and because the business, I don't know the business, right? Yeah. And so we went through that together with 4 or 5 different franchise organizations. And that's when Chad realized he was fighting it too, because our, Jared Turner, our business partner, and he's been trying to convince him to franchise his business, and he's like, no, we can't franchise because that'll destroy our name, and we got to stay local, because it's family, and so, after going through this process with Chad, he realized like, wait a minute here, it's kind of that mind shift, it's like, maybe franchising is the way to go, and so that's kind of what started that, that dialogue or that process of being a modest senior kid with Chad and Tafa down in California, and
you were the first franchisee, if I remember right.
Yeah, and I said, hey guys, listen, let's do this. I'll be your first franchisee, and I went because I knew that in order for them to succeed or us to succeed, them to see as a franchise organization, I have to succeed.
They had to have a good first guinea pig.
Yeah, and it's like if I run out of money, I'm going to go back to them and go, guys, I need some more money here. It's because I'm all in, and so versus being, one of 200 or 500, and so that gave me that opportunity to really still be an entrepreneur inside of, because these guys didn't know how to franchise either. They were learning how to franchise. They were learning how to franchise just as I was learning how to do the business side of it, and so, so that was kind of a, I talked about earlier in our conversations about kind of that proximity. I remember those early days sitting at the table with Jared and Chad and Tafa while they're trying to figure out how to do it. And it was scary for them too, because they had to invest in a bunch of money as well to, start that franchise and stuff like that. But the whole time I thought, it's like, because everybody was telling me, don't franchise. You're going to pay a big royalty every month, and there's really no value in the long run. And there's some truth to that for some people, right? But my thought process in those early days was I wasn't looking at what am I going, I'm not just building this home care business, but I'm circling myself with people that know how to build businesses, that have resources, and it was like, I've always viewed this as, okay, let's get my business up and going. Let's get the franchise organization up and going. And then what's next for us, and so, it was always about, let's build something, here where you're probably going to get more benefit than I am in the long run. And believe me, they did. But now we're business partners in several other ventures, that I believe are going to be bigger than what we created, in 2011 is when it started. Now there's 150 locations, and they're doing over $200 million in revenues a year. And so it's pretty exciting to see the growth.
Well, I think it's important to highlight that as one of your strengths is creating partnerships, being a good networker, and finding synergies that are win-wins for everybody. And I think that is a big takeaway that's going to save everybody listening a lot of time and money and frustration, is building that network and being able to view things through a lens of how can I add value to someone so that I can in turn get rewarded for that value, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like you look in the long run, you looked at these relationships and how many dividends it would pay, and not just because you're thinking about the money, but surrounding yourself with great people,
right.
And being surrounded by that group, and how, that changed everything.
Well, what's interesting is going from being the first franchise in the system, right? So when I left Pfizer, I was giving up maybe $150,000 in income a year, right? When you look at everything that's in there, right? And so a lot of people, when they leave corporate America, they're thinking, how do I replace my income, right? And my mindset when I did this was never how do I replace my income. It was how do I become free? How do I keep my income, but yet not have a job?
Right.
How do I really become free? And so when I started the business, I was all in. I mean, literally, I had no income coming in. I exhausted all that was left in my 401k, my savings, and then I had the severance package I had. So I had maybe $250,000, and that goes fast when it comes to launching a business, real fast, right?
Yes.
And so I spent the time studying the market. I created a 5-year business plan. I knew exactly what the costs were going to be. I knew how much revenue I had to bring in, and I had that charted so that when I ran out of money, right, and when those times got difficult, I could look back at that business plan and go, okay, yep, this day was coming. We knew that was going to happen, right? And so you can see it. If you don't have that plan or that path forward, then when the money gets tight, when it gets hard, you freak out and you go back and you get your old job back, and so and one of my the third franchisee that came into the system was one of the young men at church, and when I was in Kansas, that I was a scout leader, and he was the first person I think in his family graduated from college, and he's like, Rob, I want to be like you. I want to be a drug rep. So I said, okay, this is what you got to do to be a drug rep. And then after a while, he's like,
Drug lord.
Yeah. He's like, and he had an independent thing. So, he was a very strong-willed kind of guy, and realized that being a drug rep paid good, but really it was kind of a do-nothing job. And so I'm like, listen, don't, get out of that, get into the device industry, because now you're acting more like a business person, the device side, right? So we got into the device industry next, so I helped him make some contacts to do that, and did real well, and then eventually rubbed the wrong people wrong and got fired from that. And then
You
that's
get fired for rubbing people
Yeah.
different ways.
No. Yeah. So it was this around 2011 when the economy was crashing, and so he couldn't find work either, right? And so he was running out of money, and so he reached out to me. He's like, Rob, what are you doing right now? You lost your job at the same time I did, and so I kind of told him. I said, well, how much money do you have? He's like, I'm down to X amount. He told me how much money he had, and I said, okay, well, you need about 3 times that. So I said, if you go all in, burn it all. You go all in, I'll go 3 times that. And then let's open up an Amada there in Kansas, and
Nice.
and so, but I told him, I said, what's going to happen here? So you're going to go all in, and in about 4 months, what's going to happen is you're going to think this is the craziest thing you ever did.
Yeah.
And the company's going to be making money at this time and whatnot, and you're going to realize that it looks pretty red, and and the reality is the only way out is to cut and bleed more, so it's like it's time to put more money in, and so, it's the exact opposite, because what happens is on the bounce is like, you have this downward trajectory, money's going down, work's going, the business isn't growing for someone you're launching. It's like this downward trend here.
Yes.
And then you eventually bottom out, and most people, before they hit the bounce, they bail. And because what it takes is opening up a little bit harder, putting in more money, putting those extra hours, and they quit before the bounce. And that's what makes successful business people, what makes us great is everybody
Pushing
quits, right? Yeah.
Right.
Because once you've bounced here and you're up, now your mind is blown. You're like, oh my gosh, and you start getting free on that, right?
So how do you recognize those good opportunities where it's looking bad, but you have faith it's going to bounce, versus just something bad that you don't want to chase bad money with good?
Well, one is you have to understand the business that you're in, right? And so, like I said, just because you're in business doesn't mean you're going to make money, right? And even if you're in business that does make money, if you don't understand what your product is, what your service is, and you're not the best at it, or you can't attract, if you can't attract talent, then you're just not going to succeed. You can't be, back in the, there's probably a time, in certain industries where, you can put a monkey in a place, in a spot, and they're going to make money, but eventually that dries up, right?
Yes.
So you really do have to spend the time and know your trade, right? Know what you're doing, and then connect with people. You have to be able to connect with your employees, your customers, because really that's what it's about. Especially in business. If you can't look at somebody in the eye and they trust you and you trust them, you can win for a while, but eventually people realize who you are, and then it all dries up. So.
Well, I'm not going to attempt to answer that question, but something you said before you got into it, you did your whole 5-year plan. You said you did all the market research, you studied all the demand, you studied that area, and you came up with that 5-year plan. And then when you hit that bottom, right before the bounce, you remind yourself, hey, I know that this is going to happen. I trust this business. I trust my studies, my research, and then you kept going.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting is, so this 5-year plan, I knew what my personal spend was, right? And so I knew that, within 13 months, my personal savings, because I didn't pay myself anything, when I launched the business. I just lived off of my savings that I already paid the taxes on and everything, all right? And so I knew that in 13 months, I was going to have no money in savings, okay? And so
you'd wrapped your mind around it already.
Yeah, it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's like every month I watched my personal savings go down, 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 right? The business is growing, and so I woke up on January 3rd, 2013. So this is, I lost my job.
Photographic memory.
I lost my job in September of 2011. Started the business, opened the business December 2011. Started making money in March of 2012. Was completely out of money. So I woke up because my mortgage payment was due, right? I had it set up to automatically come out on the 5th. So on the 3rd, I wake up minus $300 in my bank account. And in the housing market, upside down in my house, $150,000, $200,000. And from my prior business that I had, I'd racked up credit card debt, that I still was paying. So I did January 3rd, 2013, minus $300 in my bank account, hundreds of thousands of dollars upside down in my house in equity, and tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. Wow. But I woke up and I'm like, I'm fine, because I knew that day was coming. So it was a matter of, there's no shock. I just knew it was coming. And so that day, I cut my first check for about $15,000. And that's when I started paying myself, because I knew that, hey, this is what it's going to take. And I've got to get my business making this much money by this date. And so you got to track it along the way. Where am I coming with that? And so then for the next 6 months, of course, now I'm consuming everything. So it's like, great. And now I'm like, I've got a job, I'm making money, I'm consuming it all, right? And so it's me and 2 other people in my office, and my time is just gone. I'm working 7 days a week. Yeah. You get to the point you're like going, nobody understands the business better than I do. My clients love me, right? My employees love me. And delegating, this is where the next part of growing your business really become free is, people have a hard time letting that go, right? Because it's like, this is my business, and so I make a good living now. I replaced my job, but
with a job,
that's right. And the problem is now it's like, okay, do I hire somebody? And I got to hire somebody good as well, right? Yeah. So it's like, so do I take half of what I needed? Do I go back into debt again? Do I go back into, and most people, they don't, right?
But you have to.
They've already paid the price. They've already said, I've already bounced. I've felt that pain. And it's like, I don't want to ever feel that pain again. I don't want to ever feel that uncomfortableness. And it's the same way in our careers that, before you start your own business, like you get that promotion to, senior rep and,
get the office.
You get the office, you get the promotion and
the car.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like comfortable. It's like you come to work, you got the status, life is good. And then somebody says, hey, tomorrow's your last day. I was like, whoa, what just happened, right? Well, it's the same thing when for entrepreneurs or small business people, you get to that point where like, okay, I've replaced my job. I've got a business, my people love me and stuff like that. Nobody's going to fire me. You think your customers can fire you.
You have to do it. You have to fire yourself.
Yeah. So exactly. So you have to basically say, okay, I need to learn how to delegate. I need to learn how to train and bring other people on. And that's the next thing most people don't do, is they just stay where they're at and they're afraid to go through that pain again. And they just don't believe that people can do the job as well as they can, And so they kind of get stuck in that mode of being a small business person, and where they're free from a boss or whatnot. And they control their own time, but really their time is really being controlled by their business.
I love like the ladder that you're creating. You start by first getting some cash, then investing into a business, hitting that dip, most people, you know, they quit at the hard part with starting their own business. You push through, and then most people, like you're saying, most people stop at, you know, they did it, they got through it, they don't ever want to do it again. They're making money, and they'll stop. They don't want to scale and keep going and delegate. So it's kind of cool, like this. I just imagine this ladder. Is it possible to skip a step? And what I'm thinking is, like, someone might be thinking, well, I'm not selling Pfizer. I'm not a drug lord. And so what if I'm not making enough cash to be able to go and make those investments? In order to do that one step the way you did it, is it possible to go straight into the business that you did without maybe having the capital?
Well, the thing is, capital is everything. I mean, you can't. So that's kind of goes back to, like, who are your circle of influence, right? Where's your proximity, you know? And so if you're just surrounding yourself with your old buddies at your old job that have a job every day that they're going to, right? So they don't know the pains, they don't know that, right? So if you don't have the right people around you, you know, mentoring you, saying, hey, you can get through this, you know, then, you know, you're bound to just really not succeed, you know? And so, but you really do need to have capital. I mean, capital, you know, if you don't have it, you've got to know people that have capital. And for people to go in and trust and go in, I mean, they have to believe that you've done something as well. You know what I mean? So somebody's not going to, unless they're family and they got a lot of money, they're just going to give it away or whatnot, you know, and which happens. But ultimately, like I've gotten to the point now where, you know, Ben and I are doing this, you know, a lot of things together. It's a matter of, I now have some disposable income. I've got money where I was kind of going back to rich dad, poor dad. You go from being an employee to a small business person to a big business. Now to get to investors, to the investment side.
Yes.
And so as on the I side, the investment side, you're looking for that it factor, that quality in people that you can trust, that you're going to give the money, you know, that you can invest your money in. And usually, you know, you're not going to give it to somebody or invest in something that they haven't demonstrated that they can be responsible with your money and really give you a good return on investment. So really it's difficult to start a business up without cash. Now it's a matter of, when you're young, you don't need a whole lot of cash, right? You know, and so the fortunate thing about starting at a young age, like my daughter, she's getting married, right? You know, and so they have no kids and they're finishing college, and part of me says, you know, this college is stupid. Let's just start my business and going down that road, right? And skip this nonsense of college, because it really is a waste of time in a lot of standpoints, other than you do learn how to start and finish something, and it says something about your character and what you're capable of doing, and hopefully you've learned something along the way, you know. So
right. That's quite the dilemma, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, where was I going with this?
We're just talking about capital and just people's past getting along the line.
Yeah. So, you know, I look at it and I go, and I guess maybe part of being a dad and watching your kids, and now, you know, I have boys that are 15 years old, you know, and 14 years old. My daughter's 22, and I just don't know how these guys are going to, you know, how they're going to, you know, make it with this mindset of the way that our education, you know, people are just taught to be drones, and which is great as a business person. We love drones, right? We want to hire lots of drones to come in and work for us every day, come to work, punch the clock and go that, you know what I mean? And so, you know, so I'm kind of on this fence with them. It's a matter of, so I told my to-be, you know, son-in-law on here, my daughter, she's kind of got that, you know, bug that I have, you know, that entrepreneur spirit. I said,
she can do it.
Said, yeah, when you finish school, I said, right now I want you to be thinking, you know, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? And work on your soft skills. Yes. Finish college, you know, and then let's, you know, find what you want to do, and then let's buy a franchise together, you know, where I'll have, you know, lion's share of the ownership in it here, you know, and we'll bring you on. You'll get a job working in and stuff, and then we'll grow that, and then sell it, take that capital, and then you can go off and do whatever you want on your own thing, you know. So it's going back to this, like, can you skip a step without capital? You know, it really depends on what your cost of living is, you know. So we're really,
I'd say, just like you're saying, you can bootstrap something like from ground up, but if you have your expenses are already set, you already have kids, you already have a wife, you already have a lifestyle you're used to. Yeah. You kind of need, whether it's a job or a side hustle, you kind of have to have that income, because it takes a little bit of money. You can still bootstrap something. You know, I'm thinking of myself, that was a huge advantage I had, was that my expenses were so low that I could afford to just, hustle without the consequences coming back.
When you started your business in college, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess kind of one of the sad things you think, the sooner you have this rich dad, poor dad mindset change, the younger you are in your 20s, it's like you've got decades of, income earning years, right? And so you can lose all your money in the beginning. You can fail over and over. In fact, you will fail. In fact, you're going to learn more as from your failures, your successes.
Fail faster.
I failed at Arnell Homes, right? So I learned something from that. Lost a lot of money there, and then even the last 10 years working with Jared and some of the jobs we, companies we've created over time. They failed. That's the thing about being an entrepreneur and a risk taker, and a real entrepreneur is you bury a lot of businesses in the backyard. So it's a matter, and that's part of that investment side. And it's like, when you start getting successful, you take a little bit of that money and you start creating other jobs, and that's when you look for maybe that guy who's like, he doesn't have the capital, but he's got the drive, right? And so you invest in that. But I think what's sad is you have people that get in their 40s and 50s, and they think, I'm just too old. I'm like, I can't, it's too risky, and I've got too many expenses. And that's where it's like, you can't, you do have a family, you got kids, you got, expenses here. And I've got a comfortable job, and so people think it's too risky to start something. And it is, if you haven't changed the mindset, because business is so mental, and what you realize is like, once you learn how to create wealth, you can lose it and create it again pretty quickly, And so, I'm fortunate with I've got brothers and family, that look at it and go, I just got to keep my job. I'm too old. But they've got cash, right? I mean, they've got money. They've been working for 20, 30 years. They're sitting on $1 million in their 401k. They've got $500,000 in their home equity, and so they have the resources there. They may even have the talent to do the best in their trade, but they don't have the mental, strength or the mental, fortitude, the grit to really step back and do something different. So really, you really do have to mentally prepare yourself for being in business,
and to have the vision, right? Like you have to have the picture painted. You have to drink the Kool-Aid of what's really out there,
right?
Because then you realize, okay, this is a life worth living, right? This is really a life worth living. This is what I want to pursue. At that point.
Right. It's funny because now, so I was the first franchisee in Amada, right? In 2011, so it's been over 10 years, and there's 150 out there, right? And so I now have several in Washington. I have a couple in Washington, and I have a couple in Portland, Oregon. At one point I owned all of my businesses, but I, brought on partners, so they bought out some of it. So now I own 51% or whatnot. And when I came down here to Utah, I said, okay, my employee that's been with me since the beginning, I said, okay, I'll make you a partner. This is how much you get. This was, nice benefits, all this stuff, but I'm moving to Utah. And as long as I continue to make the same amount and more each year, then I'll make you a partner. Yeah. And so I and now continue to make the same money I made when I was in corporate America, but I don't have to go to job. Whether I go to work or not. So I'm completely free on that. Now, if I wanted now, if I hadn't brought on partners, I could be making 3-4 times as much money personally, but it was the time that was more important to me than the money.
Yes.
And so I've got there's 150 franchisees in the system, and all of them, we'll go to these meetings and stuff, and they're like, Rob, how in the world do you go on vacation? Every month. Do you ever work? I'm like, well, yeah, I work I have other hustles now,
Yes.
I'm solving other problems, but, no, I don't make as much money in the business side maybe as you do, but it's a matter of what are your priorities? What do you want out of life? For me, it was my time, so, it's part of in my mind, a lot of times like, so I'm 52, I'll be 52 this year. My boys are 15 and 14. My daughter's gone. And so I got 4 more years with my boys, right? And it's like in your 50s, this is your prime high income time period. This is where you're supposed to be like in the peak of your careers and making money. Yeah. I could probably go get a job again, working for some firm, making $250,000 a year or whatnot, on top of the money that I'm already making from all my businesses, and, in the back of my head, there's still that thought process like, you need to be making more money, right? You need to be putting more away. But it goes back to 4 years from now, my kids are gone. And so that's what's important to me. That's why I did this. So that now, for the next 4 years, I'm home when they get home. Hey, you want to go up? Let's go ride the ATVs. Let's go camping. Let's do that. That freedom and that family time. They'll be gone in 4 years, and then I can go make as much money as I want. Even now I'm trying to make money. Believe me, I've got other businesses that I'm investing with you, with Big Ben Storage, and my software companies that I've got up and going. That I've got employees doing that. A lot of these jobs I'm not making any money on. I'm just feeding it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but that process of letting go, people get their jobs up, get their businesses up, but they don't know how to delegate and let go.
It's a key thing to go from at small business to big business to empire, right? Because you get comfortable and you have to sacrifice again, right? And it's like you make that initial sacrifice when you're bootstrapping a business, but then you scale your business and you have to sacrifice again. When you give a piece of the pie to the admin, when you give we are doing this same thing, both me and Callan, with this podcast, with Big Storage Ventures. We're making sacrifices, even though if we chose not to do Big Storage Ventures, we chose not to do the podcast, like, trust me, we'd be taking a lot more home from just the one storage
absolutely,
and the moving company.
Sure.
But it's like, this is resonating with me so much because I'm living it, and I think it's a mindset shift that happened a long time ago, just when you get into entrepreneurship.
In Sterling, Alaska.
That's
right.
Yes, I was asleep in the back seat.
The year 2000.
My uncle and my dad were in the
Kenai River.
Yes.
Hole in the boots.
Yes, exactly. I got the crappy pair of boots because they wouldn't sew it up or buy me new waders.
Yeah. Get the shoe goo.
But I love it, man. It really is a good reminder. Just it helps you refocus on your why and the sacrifices you make. And every time you get something, you gotta like with your software stuff, like you had all this hay with your business, you scaled it up. Now you're giving someone else a piece of that to go work on your software and your bigger goals and to make smart investments and to spend time with your family, right?
Yeah.
And another thing I want to just hyper focus on too is, you talked a lot about who you surround yourself with, right? Not just spending time with your same old friends, which we need to too, but also just rubbing shoulders with people that are where you want to be, or that might have a mindset that you want to add to yours.
Right.
That's a big deal. And I
For
think
sure.
something you've exemplified really well.
Well, you have to continually step out of that comfort zone, right? And it's a matter of learning new, skill sets, or just learning new whole vocabulary, with people that are on there. And it's a matter of realizing that, in order to grow and get to the next level, you've always got to be a little bit more uncomfortable. And the more successful you get, the more easy it is to know, just to kind of stop and say, oh, I'm pretty comfortable as it is, And so why do I need to stretch a little bit more, but that really is the key, is.
Yeah. Well, something you're saying about like comfort, like sometimes getting out of your comfort zone might not be, this is just going through my mind. It might not be going to learn a new skill, but for you stayed in that same industry, but you getting out of your comfort zone was starting over, like getting more debt, starting another franchise, like delegating that original business, which I think is something to add. I'm just really impressed because I think it's like, I was getting chills when you're talking about that 4 years with your kids. And it's just because it just seems that is so important. It's hard to like explain how critical that is, and how it's not easy to really give up $250,000 a year, right? Like, I just don't know how to like, for people to understand, like, it is hard. Like, people want to make more money. Like, it's got to be hard for you to not work as much, and to be like, hey, I can just have so much more cash. But it really is a big deal to make that choice and to choose, hey, I'm going to make less money. I'm going to give up a little bit of, maybe the power, give up a little bit of my control, or give up a little bit so that I can have this time and freedom. I don't think that's, you can downplay that at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just knowing what your priorities are, and just, really being true to who you are and what you want to accomplish. And at the end of the day, money comes and goes, so really, it was my brother-in-law, his brother's a financial advisor. And I remember, I was in my 20s, my brother-in-law told me, he's like, yeah, money is a concept. it really doesn't exist. I'm like, you crazy? It exists. But then as you realize, does it really exist? You know what I mean? It's a matter of, it's like, how often do I have money in my wallet? You know what I mean? It's a matter of, really, it comes from, there's something that shows up in this bank account that has a number there. It's here today. It's this much and it's gone, you know, and the stock market goes up and down. Do we really have that money, right? And so you just realize.
That's not even to mention Bitcoin and Warpig tokens.
That's exactly right. So, but the sure is, there's going to be a time when we exit this world and, and we're done. And so it's a matter of what did you do with that time? And really that's what's important to me, as far as there's a time to make money, there's time to be with family, and there's a time to, to relax, and there's time to work hard. And, so knowing what your why is, really, you mentioned, really, pushes you, in what direction.
And I think about it, I have this mentorship with you where you kind of help me financially, but we have all those awesome memories, right? That if that's more, like, even more value than the financial advice, you've created time so we can go to Lake Powell, go to Alaska, go to Costa Rica.
Well, it's funny you say it, because I talk with Jared about this all the time.
Yeah.
The best time, even like when I've been married 28 years, those first years when you're like, do we have any money in the bank account? It's like, and you're like, you're not just going out, on vacation or whatnot. Those early years where you're just scrapping by, are some of the most rewarding times. And we look back over those 10 years of building Amada, where it's like, okay, is this going to take off? It's like, we've got 3 franchises now. We got 4 franchises. We got to put more money in it, as far as, that whole raw entrepreneurship of this isn't working. Let's do this, let's try to figure out how to build. Those are the exciting times, when you're like going, is it going to, is this going to take off or is it not going to take off? That's when you're living, when it's like, money's coming in, you got systems in place, and it's just on cruise control. That's fun on a personal standpoint, but from a building standpoint, from a business entrepreneur standpoint, that's not where the fun is. The fun is like getting up every day and going to war, and just like, let's, how are we going to beat our competition? How are we going to stay in business? And that uncertainty of like, okay, it's like, if I go play if I go wrestle, I wrestled in high school and college, let's go wrestle the, junior high school team. Let's see how well we do, right? That's a known destiny. Things that matter. How do we stretch ourselves? It's like, that's when you don't know if you're going to win or lose, that's when it's fun.
Yes.
So
when there's something on the line.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we've had an awesome time. I think we have a lot of key takeaways today. Can't thank you enough for coming on, man.
That's always fun.
What's next for you?
Oh, let's see here. Next for me, well,
this big software company, right?
Yeah, we're right now we're launching, our software platform. It's the nice thing about being in business is businesses have all these little fingers in them, right? Mm-hmm. And so, there's lots of ways to grow and solve those problems. So, yeah, we're growing a software company, working with Ben and Big Ben Storage.
Big Storage Ventures,
that's
baby.
Right. That's what's next. What have you found any? Callan, what's our next deal, huh?
Well, we got a bunch in the pipeline, some really good deals in the pipeline. We just gotta get through a couple hurdles. People, you have to be able to convince, it's the right time to sell.
Sure.
It's that perfect hitting right in the perfect timing on someone. So
well, we can't thank you enough. We got a lot of good takeaways, a lot of good fun business ventures together in the future, and fun experiences together as family. So thanks for coming on, Rob.
That was fun.
Thanks, Rob.
You bet, guys.